My name is Neil Shyminsky. By day, I am a college English professor here in Sudbury. I'm a dad to a couple of daughters. I'm a husband to my wonderful actor wife. After hours, I turn into Professor Neil, the social media influencer, who talks about healthy masculinity and makes a lot of videos taking shots at and poking fun at the manosphere and these alpha bro life and dating coaches who are wrong about literally everything.
I love that. So what inspired you to take that on?
Well, it's funny. It kind of happened by accident that I became this social media figure, or at least, I ended up where I am by accident because I started posting on TikTok early in 2021. And it was because I was teaching a class on comic books and graphic novels. And there was just so much that I loved talking about that somebody suggested, hey, this would be great to share in a TikTok. So I started a TikTok account talking about comic books. And my research interests and my work in grad school was on men and masculinity. So a lot of my interest in superheroes was also about masculinity, like Wolverine, Superman, Batman. We could talk about sort of the models of manhood that they project for hours, right? So that was the approach that I took to that channel. But then I started, being exposed to more and more of the manosphere and seeing what they were putting out there. And with no plan in mind, my focus just sort of shifted over a period of a year and a half, until I think I just realized one day that it had been a week since I had talked about comic books or superheroes. Um, and now, of course, it's like 80%, 90% of what I'm putting out there is either responding to one of these coaches or talking about masculinity and being a man in one way or another.
Right. So let's start with being a man because I would love to know how the comic book heroes influenced your understanding of your own being a man, and then how that's translated into your ability to dissect what's wrong about what so many of these people are spewing, right? And you're so good in such a humorous, amazing way breaking it down. So, yeah, if we could talk about maybe the comic books influencing your identity as a man, or maybe there were other influences.
Sure. No, no. The comic books and superheroes are a great way into this. Because you have sort of the classic setup with a superhero is, the real life identity and then the costume identity, right? And one of the conversations that we often have in the field of superhero or graphic novel studies is this discussion about that dual identity and is one real, is one fake? There's this classic speech from the Quentin Tarantino movie Kill Bill, where Bill goes on about how Superman is the real guy. Superman is the way that we would all act if we had this massive power. Where in Bill's opinion, Superman looks down on us. He's nice about it, but it's because he knows that he is untouchable, that no human being will ever be his match, so he can behave however he wants. And Clark Kent in Bill's speech um, is how he really feels about us. That we are pathetic, we hide, um, and this is an indictment of humanity. I hate that speech, and I
You're like, let me be clear.
yes, yes, and this is actually, but it's great because it started all of these conversations. It was a great window into talking about Okay, well, who is Superman really, and what function do these two identities serve? Um, because I think in a lot of ways, and this is sort of we're psychoanalyzing a comic book character or a movie character, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like it's fictional. We're projecting onto him. So what I take from this instead is like, no, that's not Superman's view of humanity. That's Quentin Tarantino's view of humanity. Uh, we're always saying more about us than we are about the characters, right? So when I say, Superman means this, I'm saying, this is my view of humanity or masculinity, and I'm expressing it through an interpretation of Superman. And I'm inclined to see Superman as like the, the very best of us, the best that we can be. There's a very famous comic book, All Star Superman, this 12-issue series where at the end Lex Luthor steals Superman's power. So he's able to finally take him in a fight. Uh, and it turns out at the end that Superman has been stalling this entire time. Superman is not trying to defeat Lex Luthor, even though he reveals at the end he could have at any moment. Um, and Lex Luthor at one point realizes Superman's not fighting back. He asks him why. And Superman is like, wait for it, Lex. And suddenly Lex Luthor starts crying. And he's like, wait a minute. I suddenly realized um, just how much I care about everyone else. Um, what's going on? What have you done to me? And Superman says, like, Lex, all of my senses are superhuman, including my ability to feel empathy. And he's Lex Luthor's like, oh my God, like this, we only have each other. We count on each other, and everybody counts on you every moment of every day. Like, how do you live this? And he's like, Lex, you learn. And then he like punches him out. But
Kind
it's
of
like,
what you
yeah,
do in your video.
I hope so, right? Um, but yeah, it's like this. Oh, this is the version of Superman that I like to recommend to people. And that yeah, he he would be if he is like a super version of everything. Why would he not also have a super capacity for love? And for friendship, for community. Um, yeah. So there are so many different directions that I could take the
Well,
conversation with.
my question is, how is that inherently masculine in that I love what Dr. Niobe Way says about we have taken the human need for connection and we have genderized it and demeaned it, right? And so anything that's girly or gay is considered, bad, right?
Yeah,
Because of, our own internalized misogyny. And so I'm just wondering, like, how is that a masculine thing versus a human thing? And that kind of dovetails into another question, and I do this a lot where I ask multiple questions and then you can take
mhm,
it from here. But it dovetails into the kind of performative masculinity you talk about in a lot of your videos about being able to wear a flannel shirt or being able to wear this other thing and like, you know, the quest for authenticity, but, like, aren't you always you? So
sure. Yeah, I mean, so for the first question, how is any of this inherently masculine? My answer is it's not. Like there is nothing that is inherently masculine, inherently feminine. We have sort of the famous example of the fact that blue and pink were not colors assigned to boys and girls until about 80 years ago. There's actually a moment that fashion historians have been able to identify as that moment where pink became a girl's color. And it was in World War II when the First Lady of the United States, her favorite color was pink. And so she was fundraising for the war effort. All of the events that she held were built around a pink theme. And so in this moment, incredible media attention on this one woman and her fundraising efforts and that association of pink and women because they would be events where she would invite women to be giving to the war effort, um, created this idea that pink is a girl's color. Um, Somehow we fooled ourselves into thinking we forgot that it hadn't always been that, and it just became somehow inherently pink in our collective minds. But it's not. Nothing is. These are value judgments. They're political. They're ideological. It serves somebody's interest to have us believing that it's inherent. And if you hear often enough, hear it from enough people, you don't question it until somebody starts asking questions. And then as for authenticity, um, I mean, yeah, I think you can see here, I wasn't thinking about this when I chose the shirt, but it's a floral pattern shirt.
Love it.
I have so many floral shirts. But as you said, I also have my flannels and I wear them very strategically when I feel like especially because I work at a community college. A lot of folks in the trades, in applied technology, and in certain rooms, in certain conversations, I feel like I need to project something that will appear to them to be authentically and inherently masculine. So why not, a red and black patterned flannel shirt that makes me look like a lumberjack. I have like a little bit of stubble too. Um, and to me, that does feel very performative. It does feel like I'm putting on a costume. Um, but I grew up in rural northern Ontario. I know how to put that act on too. I don't know that it is all that detectable to people who don't know me really well.
Right.
Um,
Well, so
but
for
again,
sorry, go on.
no, no, go. I was
I
just
was
going to
just
say,
gonna
like,
you go, 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 go.
okay, in some sense, and maybe this is a product of me overthinking, but I think that we all do this to some extent. Like you're going into a social space, you have a sense of what the who will be there and what the expectation is. Um, and to some extent, we are then always putting on costumes and performances that are suited. Or, maybe we're very oppositional and we're putting on something that will not fit very deliberately. Like those choices, those performances are always happening somewhere in your head.
Well, so this is my follow-up question, which is growing up in Northern Ontario, where there was this kind of culture that informed a certain understanding of what it means to be a boy and a man. How did you process that and then come to your own conclusion? It reminds me a little bit about like growing up in a super religious household and then at some point being like, wait, do I believe in this? Like, is this really what I believe in? So, could you talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that process of how you came to be Neil?
Sure. Um, I mean, it's funny. I sometimes like to say that I grew up, and my parents agree with this description. I grew up in an accidentally feminist house. Um,
You can name
yeah,
it your memoir.
yeah. It was not intentional. It was not explicit. But growing up, my mom started work every morning at 7 a.m. So it was my dad for my entire childhood who was getting me and my brothers out of bed, making us breakfast, making our lunch for school. If we missed the bus, he was the one who was driving us to school. He was a salesman, so he had a slightly more flexible work schedule too, which meant if for some reason if somebody was sick and had to be driven to the doctor, or if we had some sort of after school activity, it was usually my dad that was doing it. Um, so the gender roles in my home were super flexible. Whoever was available would be the person who's taking care of it, whatever. whatever task we're talking about. So despite growing up in Northern Ontario, um, that was the home that I was learning gender roles in. And so I didn't have a super clear sense, that there were masculine roles and there were feminine roles. It was, well, whoever's available to do the job. Um, Aside from that, though, like it didn't really crystallize in my head until I started university. That's where suddenly you're exposed to all these brain exploding ideas, right? Which, in a lot of cases, were ideas or feelings that I had and just couldn't put a word to. Um, so it was transformative in the sense that I suddenly had this language available to me, um, to describe things that I could not describe before. But I mean, I grew up with an equally nerdy older brother, but we weren't, despite the fact that my family is three boys. Uh, we were not your typical family of boys. Like all comic book and board game nerds and big readers, and um, the sort of little guy. I was the smallest boy in every class in school until I was 15 years old, and then I grew like 10 inches in 1 year. Um, so I was also routinely bullied, and picked on.
Well, that's what I
So
was
so
gonna ask, like, it's one thing to grow up in a feminist, even if it's accidental household, and it's another thing to grow up in a culture of boys that is
mhm,
not the typical culture of boys within your household. But then there's the world, and so how do you smack against the world that you were in? And so you were saying you were bullied for
mhm.
being small or not being masculine?
Yeah, I certainly tried to be masculine as a boy. This is I think, we can connect this back to the superhero conversation because my favorite superhero growing up was Wolverine. And Wolverine, not so much as Hugh Jackman, but Wolverine in the comic books he's little. He's 5'3". So he's a short guy, short king. Um, and he's angry and combative. And I tried to bring some of that energy to boys' spaces when I was growing up, where maybe no one will want to pick on me if like I'm also aggressive and snarly. Um, it did not work so. It didn't. Um, and something that I remember hearing when I was about somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. My mom came to pick me up from elementary school because I had gotten in a fight. And the principal told her, um, that I'm okay because I can give as bad as I get, if not worse, with my words. So I knew how to make a really well placed insult, um, which I wouldn't have recognized at the time, but I definitely recognize now as it just a different brand of toxic masculinity. Um, that I could like really take a good gut punch at somebody's sense of masculinity and manliness. Um,
And
but
do you think you do that now with your videos?
um, to some extent, yes. There's and people have asked me about this to say like how do you feel about the fact that like you are also using a certain kind of aggression and sarcasm and
When you said
snarkiness.
snarky, I was like, "That's a lot of your videos are snarky."
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love it, like, love it. But, yeah, I'm wondering, like, if there's a crossover there, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and like I put a lot of thought into, and I'll say this because like Professor Neil is a bit of a character or a
Yes.
caricature, right? Especially in those videos where I'm responding to Men in the Manosphere. I'm really playing up a certain part of my personality, and it is one, yes, that is snarky and sarcastic and aggressive, and hostile, honestly. Um, and the sort of the thinking that went into that decision, first of all, is that I think that it's valuable to respond to these men in a variety of different
Yes.
strategies. And there are people out there who do the calling in, who approach with sort of with a hope that they can reach some of these men. They can change their minds, or to pull out a seed of a good point there, and redirect. And those are valuable approaches.
You're like, "Great, love it, not me."
Yeah, this is not my approach. Um, and hopefully that will speak to some people, and what I am doing will speak to some others. Because what I'm trying to very deliberately do is take some of the energy, some of the strategy that they employ too, and spin that back on. This is my little like judo in a lot of cases, because I know that there is something very attractive and appealing about their style, about the way that they speak. Um, so I'm going to use a little bit of that, because I think that that is a way into the conversation. There are a lot of men who won't listen to that more sensitive, thoughtful approach. Like that is an immediate turn on.
Right.
Um,
Right, like, I was gonna say, you made being good to your wife cool. Like that video that you did about the lipstick and how you were like,
mhm,
talking about having a notebook and just writing down things that she wants or wouldn't spend on herself or whatever, and you calling it like the bare minimum, like
mhm.
that should just be how it goes. Um, and so much of the advice that's given is going to keep men single because you're not having an actual relationship where you're loving, and that was something I was gonna say. Did you read the comedian Michael Ian Black's, book, A Letter to My Son?
I did not know.
You would really like it, but one of the things he says, and you said, and it reminded me of, is that to love someone is the strongest thing we can do. Like,
Mm,
what takes more bravery than to love in the face of potential loss, whether someone leaves us by choice or death, right? Like, loving is takes so much strength. And so, could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think you're doing it in a really positive way.
yeah. Well, before talking specifically about strength, I,
Yeah.
I want to go back just a little bit
Yeah,
because
please.
you used the word cool, and I've talked at length in when I do sort of more academic presentations. Um, we frequently talk about how cool the manosphere is. And that's part of the challenge, is that it's very difficult for people working in universities, teaching, college and university students, um, to respond to someone who's cool, especially because we are generally not good at that. Um, and so when I've talked in these very academic terms in these rooms about like what I try to do, part of it is first of all disrupting how cool they are.
Yes.
So part of making them look not just wrong but foolish,
Yes.
is to try and remove some of that veneer of cool. Try to like that this is not actually cool. These guys are buffoons. They don't know what they're talking about. They are blowing smoke up. Um, in those exact words sometimes.
Yeah, I love that.
Um, and and I will fully admit that in those moments too, like I am trying to do, the classic Indiana Jones switcheroo with a golden idol in the bag of sand to say like, look, I'm not gonna go out there and tell you that I'm not gonna I would never be so brash. Am I hoping that you are listening to me and you're like, "Hey, this guy is, like, funny and smart, he
Yes.
knows what he's talking. This is pretty cool." Like, I'm hoping that you get there yourself. Yes. Um, and maybe from there, that you'll do some more exploration and some reading, and I don't want anybody to attach themselves to me in the way that they attach themselves to something like
No, no.
Tate or
And nothing about what you do, has that air about it. It really just is, "Could you please start questioning what you're
yeah,
thinking as
it's
the truth?" Yeah,
curiosity,
yeah.
right? Like, I want people to be curious and even curious about, what I'm saying, the claims that I
Yes.
am making. Like, that's why I throw up, articles and book covers behind me because it's like, "Hey, if you think this sounds good, like, this is where you should go next. Check this out." Um, so, but as for strength, which I think is, absolutely part of the appeal too. It's not just in the solutions that they're recommending, it's in the way that they describe problems too. They make every problem that men or boys are experiencing sound so simple, straightforward, uncomplicated, when we know that the truth is that it is incredibly complicated and confusing, and there are so many different factors at play. But that's scary. Like, to know that it's complex and confusing, that means that, hey, maybe I'm not going to be able to wrap my head around it. Maybe I'm not going to be able to solve it myself. But here's somebody who's telling me, actually, it's women that are doing it to you, and the solution is returning to things that the way that they were in the 1950s. Nice and easy. It's like, oh, well, that's something I could try. Whereas if somebody says, "Hey, Neil, what do you recommend?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm writing a book where I have 20 different pieces of advice for." Well, that's even when I try to make it as simple as possible,
It's
uh,
not.
be yeah, because I don't wanna be dishonest with you. But, here, just try this one easy solution to all of your problems.
So do you think of yourself as a counter to these kind of manosphere influencers? Like, do you have, like, a conscious mission of, like, if I could get through to X amount of young men to really see relationship equality as a positive or to see vulnerability, right? And the ability to like even have fun with the performative nature of masculinity. Like, do you have like a conscious intention?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think it certainly didn't start that way, but especially in the last 2 years, I would say, um, that is exactly how I think about it. It's how I talk about what I do with other influencers as well. Um, it I'm friends with a lot of the men and many of the women who work in this space and in spaces adjacent to it, talking about, not just, relationship topics, but deep diving into things like invisible labor. Um,
Invisible what?
invisible labor.
Tell
So,
me. Right.
like
If you could
domestic work,
explain that a
but
little bit. Yeah.
also, yeah. So invisible labor in relationships being, that work that is often unnoticed by one partner, that is taken on by somebody without, any sort of discussion because it is really deeply gendered. So the fact that, the bathroom is always clean, but you never clean it. Hmm, how does that happen?
Right.
Um, so very concrete tasks like that, but also getting into, emotional and planning and thinking work. The planning what we're going to eat and who's gonna go to the store to pick it up and so on and so forth. A lot of that work goes unnoticed unless we are sitting down and we are having conversations that are very explicit to make sure that, the labor is fair.
I don't think I ever got an answer about what being a man means to you I mean, I can surmise based on everything we've talked about, but do you have, like, a sense of what that is?
Yeah. What being a man means to me. Um, I I, I think I want to be difficult in my answer in my response to this question.
Okay.
Um, because I sort of I don't like the premise of the question. Like
Yeah, I'm with
that
you.
like being a man shouldn't be set up as some sort of category distinct from like being a woman or being an adult human. Because the goal really here is, yeah, building your sense of curiosity and your capacity for compassion and building community. And these are human tasks and human problems. And attaching the label of man to it just immediately makes it kind of divisive. Because like man, as opposed to woman, as opposed to girl and boy, as if these are distinct categories that fill different functions. And I just don't really see the use in all of that. Um, now, that's what I say in this conversation here. Again, if I was talking about this over social media, I might take a slightly different approach because I know that I'm speaking to people who are very invested in the category of man, and who have been taught that man is something that is distinct from woman and from boy. And so I might be a little more strategic there
Yes.
to talk about the importance of being a good man who has healthy masculinity, and that can be a distinct practice. But I'll try to work the same themes into right to say like, well, men are explorers. We are curious. And maybe we can hijack some of that language of like being a protector. Protectors need to work from a place of compassion. And oh, leaders like of a team. So we're in community with one another, and we need to cooperate. So there's the answer, the deeply philosophical, abstract answer that I would give you about being a man. That's like, well, no, it's just about being a good human.
Yeah.
And then that more strategic one that I might deploy in a conversation with a certain kind of audience.
Right, because you're trying to get that person who has a very rigid understanding of what it means to be a man to think in a more expansive way. And so
Mhm.
that's a success if you get someone to be like, "Oh, hey, like maybe I don't have to be stoic and hard. Maybe that there's another way to be strong," right? Like then that's a
Yep.
success. I think about that with built up boys. People, are like, "Well, if you don't really believe in gender, right? And you're focused on gender, like, why?" And I'm like, because it exists right now and it's hurting boys. And so, how can I create, an environment, a circle where where boys can define what it means for them, right? Like, where they
Mhm.
can learn skills of caretaking and other things, like, and that can be just as much as your identity as it is for a girl. Okay, so given that I mostly deal with caregivers, parents and caregivers of young boys, would
Mhm.
you have advice because you try to take on the manosphere? So I'll ask very directly. Advice for caregivers to help safeguard their boys against that influence.
Yeah. Um, I think that sort of maybe the number one piece of advice here, and this is on my mind, particularly because I was reading something about this topic just last night. Um, be very careful with exposure to social media. To the point of, even avoid it for as long as possible. And what I was reading yesterday was saying that all you have to do is start a social media account. And so this was a study, uh, and say that you are male. And it didn't matter what interests they selected, it didn't matter what they chose to watch themselves, what age they entered when they created the account. In every case, within 30 minutes, they were being fed manosphere. So the mere fact that you are saying you are a boy or a man means that the algorithms know, look, there's a very good chance then that you're going to want to watch something from Andrew Tate, that you are going to be interested in hearing somebody's misogynist philosophy on the world and women and relationships. Uh, and it does not matter what you actually came here for. This is something that we talk about as well when we discuss like the manosphere pipeline or the alt right pipeline. Um, you're looking for fitness or workout tips, that leads back to the manosphere. You're looking for anything having to do with wellness or diet, that leads back to the manosphere. Sports, going to lead you back to the manosphere. Um, there are
Gaming,
tendrils, yeah, gaming,
right?
yes, crypto, all
Oh,
of this stuff,
you're like everything.
everything. It is everything. And these men, the manfluencers, know this, which is why they are bridging out into these topics too, so that it will all lead back to them. And there is no way because the algorithms are not on our side here. There's no way to build a social media experience that escapes that. Just by the fact that they are boys, it means that it will lead there eventually. And it's really tough to inoculate people against that. I don't even like to think about like if I were a 13-year-old boy on social media, um, especially knowing that like I was a nerdy pipsqueak. Uh, I'm sure it could have found somebody who would feel like they were speaking directly to me too.
Yeah,
How would any of us have turned out if we were
right.
growing up in that environment? Um,
Okay, so let's say a parent, caregiver has not been careful, right? And their kid's just on YouTube and they're 9, 10, 11, and they have been exposed to some of this language. How would you suggest a caregiver address it?
yeah.
You're
Carefully.
like, fuck. It's him.
I mean, this is tough, right? And it is tough because um, a, a caregiver is, by virtue of being, the parent or the guardian, or the elder family member of this child, is working from a very uncool place. And you run the risk very easily of just confirming everything that they are hearing already, um, about people like you. And that's always been the problem, right? That like parents aren't cool. The trusted cool voice has already anticipated that and warned kids that their parents aren't cool and won't be cool with them. Um, and that's when it becomes important. I think, and maybe it's very self-serving of me to suggest that you find people who are doing work like
Like
the work
you.
that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, because 'cause you're
Um,
cool. Like, you've done it. Like, I really can say, like, I watched that video and I was like, "Wow, he makes it sound cool to be good to women." Like, that is that's awesome.
and there are a lot of us out there. We're not very organized, unfortunately. Um, we're trying. We're working on it. Um, I'm not the only person in this space who's also working on a book, who's working on creating more of these resources. And some of these resources do already exist. They're out there. I have friends like Jeff Pereira, Brendan Kwiatkowski, who are a couple of Canadians who are working in this space, who do workshops, who teach boys. So that those folks exist, those resources exist. They're greatly outnumbered by the men in the manosphere, but it's a growing response. And um, whether folks want to reach out to me or to some of these other fellas, whether you just want to hit Google and see what you can find on your own, um, the people to talk to exist, the groups. that you can reach out to. Groups like your own exist, and hopefully, if you make that one point of contact, then they can help direct you as well.
I think that's great advice. And then in terms of being the cool, um, model, do you have any recommendations for parents, whether it's fathers or mothers or whatever, um, to be cool? Such a weird question, but it's like
It's funny. Oh well, I mean, cool can take a lot of different forms, right? I think that, and this is particularly for people who either it's not yet a problem or you don't know it's a problem. Um, I think that my parents, and I don't think they would ever call themselves cool. Um, are a good model here, like being accidentally feminist.
right.
It may be the best way to try to defend your kids from something like the manosphere, is to live in a way that models that sort of flexible gender roles, and that doesn't push any sort of ideology of masculinity and femininity and anything that is inherent. And it's like, no, like we all come to this family as equal participants and equal partners. Um, what's my job today might be your job tomorrow because every job can belong to anyone. And I think that that's maybe the easiest way to prepare your kids to hear some of the bullshit that's out there, because they'll recognize that that doesn't align with my experience. That doesn't describe the way that I grew up. So clearly, this isn't the only way.
I love that.